Thank you everyone for the October 7th Policy Committee. We will begin with public comment if there is public comment.
Yes.
Yes.
We have Nancy Braun, who would like to speak.
Do I need to use a microphone or?
We don't have a microphone in here. Well, there's a microphone there, so you can project.
Okay,
Yeah.
use my teacher voice. Okay, I'll do my best. Thank you. I'm Nancy Braun and I am a kindergarten teacher. So I have a question, for the policy committee. It's about policy 5140, the entrance age. For students or for kindergarten, I guess specifically. It looks like it was adopted in 2013 and it was last reviewed 2017. And it's simply children who reach their 5th birthday on or before December 1st of the year of matriculation are entitled to attend school and may be admitted to kindergarten. And then it, talks about proof of age. So I guess I would love, I know that the policy committee is doing a lot of work and a lot of reviews. So just as a kindergarten teacher, I would love just some, when we get to it, updated thinking on the policy, what research says. I mean, I've been doing a little bit of my own research. And obviously I have my lived experience as a kindergarten teacher. And so I would just love to request another review of this, the research, and what sort of the guiding principles, should you, keep it the same or make any changes, what guides the thinking. I've already communicated through the curriculum committee meeting, we talked about having listening circles and I specifically said I'd love to have an early childhood one. I'd love to have more conversations about how we start our kids off in ICSD. We talk a lot about graduation and how they finish out, but I'd love to have some conversations about how we can set them up for success at the very beginning. So that's just a request that we embark on looking at that when it fits into the policy. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think New York State, I think is one of them.
Committee.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
I'm wondering, go ahead, feel free.
New York State is one of only like 4 states in the country that sets their kindergarten cutoff date at this time in the middle of the year around December. Almost every state sets it around August, September, sometimes like October 1st. So it's pretty rare. But in New York State is one of those states that does that. There's, endless amounts of research on the benefits or drawbacks to setting it at certain times throughout the year, and or whether parents choose to redshirt their kids and keeping them back a year if they're right around that cutoff date. For the most part, that research has not been conclusive enough on one way or the other for states to often make a shift in the policy. It really is even more like they find it different for kids who have birthdays in January to March. It's different than for kids in other parts depending on what it is. So I don't know how much leeway we have in beyond the state mandated policy.
Yeah, I think my first response would be to take a look at the law that's listed here and see if there is any leeway whatsoever. It's still always worth the conversation and the question. And it does remind me, we used to have an early childhood advisory council that I want to say ended just after COVID. And it may be time to reconsider that group again, trying to coordinate a number of community organizations, a number of community efforts around early childhood education. And so it may not impact the policy as Emily stated, given New York State law, but it doesn't mean we can't engage in other dialogues and conversations about how best to bring our youngest ones into our district, right? I mean, that's part of what I heard. So we'll put it on an agenda just to have the conversation. We'll reach out to our legal counsel and see if they have any input, see if any, I'm gonna again assume it's New York State law, but we can, they'll ask questions at the very least. And I think I can find the report and send it your way. The Early Childhood Advisory Council presented to the board about their work that they did during that time, and I'll forward it your way. It may or may not be helpful, but at least provides a little bit of context to some of the conversations folks have had in our community.
It's really a nice feature that on the policy page, it had the links to the New York Ed law. And I actually saw some contradictory stuff. So that's why I thought we could look into it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for your work as well. We'll follow up. Any other, you have a response? Any other public comment?
No.
Great. Next agenda item is approval of the minutes from the September 8th meeting. Goodbye you, Madeline, or goodbye you, Emily.
Yeah.
I will abstain, having not been in attendance.
We also have all this. Yes. Is it fit? Yeah, I think I shared that with you last night. Yeah.
Yep.
And what was the reason? I think you could really review it, yeah. Yeah.
I'm good with all this, those minutes I read. Emily, no, fantastic, good. All right, this will bring us to our discussion items, and possibly voting item for the day. First is the safety plan. We have Dan Bryan here to join us. We know we say it all the time, but I'm saying it knowing that are we recording in this space as well?
Yeah.
That it is a requirement to review the safety plan every year. We post it up on our website so everyone has access to it. And in addition to the district safety plan, each school building has a safety plan as well. But we make modifications as we hear feedback from folks and as things change and regulations change. So,
Sure.
Dr. Bryan, what do you have for us?
I'm gonna share some of the acquired updates from the state. I know I did this last time, but I also wanted to give you time to look it over and let me know if you have any suggestions. So we received a few memos this year to update our safety plan. And we have some new standards for drills, emergency planning and communication. The state's moving towards trauma-informed drills. And they want to create unnecessary stress for students and take into account emotional needs of students and staff. And the way that we're doing that, and we're following this through the state, is we're working hard to have advanced notification of all of our drills to parents and guardians. So there's no confusion, so everybody knows that a drill is a drill. For example, the high school had a lockdown drill on September 30th. They sent advanced notification about that. And of course, when we're doing our drills, we always say this is a drill. And that's the next thing, clear identification of drills. When we say our drills, we say this isn't a real emergency, this is a drill. We don't say that for our classic evacuation drills per the state. We just want people, and because of that, we want the reason we're doing that is we want people to practice leaving the building as fast as possible and working on that. Other things that have happened that the state has asked is labeled floor plans. There's also some different terminology used for our shell, which is our shelter in place, hold in place, evacuation, lockdown, and lockout. So there's some changes in the language there, and we'll be updating those in our documents that we send to all buildings. I've already provided a safety update for our administrators and for all our administrative assistants in all our buildings as well. And some other things that we're including, something new that we're including in our safety plan this year is the extreme heat and emergency response. That's another thing. When it reaches 82 degrees, we are to take certain measures where we turn off overhead lights, lower shades, operate fans, open doors. We actually, and if we know hot weather is coming, we do it the night before, just to make sure we bring in the cool air at the night so that the building is cool. When it reaches 88 degrees in our instructional spaces, and so the language has changed. Governor Hochul's new language says relocated to cooler areas whenever practical. It was at first, I'm sure you remember, but at first it was a mandate, but now language has been added that includes whenever practical. And to be honest, when last year, when some of our spaces were reaching these temperatures, probably in the last few weeks of school, some of the classrooms didn't want to move, or it was not practical for the classroom to move. So what we did is we just brought in fans and other things to make the space cooler. Also, there's an interesting way to change the state wants us to take the temperature 3 feet off the ground using a psychrometer. I would say it wrong. Which
I'm gonna test Google. So.
I was on a roll. So we have each one of these devices in our schools. We've trained each one of our custodians, and that's how we'll take the temperature. Of course, we're also monitoring the temperature in all the classrooms using our it's called the continuum, and that lets us know the temperature of each classroom. Those are the major updates for the safety plan, and that's as fast as I can get through them. They're on page number 6. So that's what I'm doing every year. I'm just putting an update page in the safety plan.
Oh, so page number 6 outlines the changes that are
correct.
Dan, 2 questions before we ask
Sure.
some additional ones. One, in talking about this new temperature measurement system.
Yeah.
Are we logging temperatures anywhere? Like, is there?
Well, actually, yeah, we before I asked Tetra Tech to give us a year of temperatures in all of our spaces and do a historical heat mapping, literally, of all our spaces. And we do have that data. And I've shared that data with our administrators. Really, it shows us that we just have to look out for September and August. Those are 2, or not August, I'm sorry, June rather. But towards the end of June, in the last 3 weeks, we can see what rooms get the hottest. It's always the second floors, right? It's upper G and upper H, but we're not going to have the same problem with upper G and H, because now we have 400 tons of cool air that we can move anywhere within the high school, and we're going to send it to G and H first, because that's our highest.
Gotcha. 2 more quick questions to that. One, a comment is, I assume that historically, yes, it's been June and September.
Yeah.
But we just had an 85-degree weather day in October.
Right.
So we know that those things have changed. I'd be curious about that. I know there's some confusion amongst community folks and just in general about this particular mandate, that there is sort of an expectation that we must cancel school, or we must remove folks from the classroom. But the language of the mandate is a little more vague than that and just requires steps and actions be taken. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, I think when Governor Hochul added the language of if classroom spaces reach 88 degrees, staff and students will be relocated to cooler areas whenever practical. I think when we say whenever practical, it changed the mandate. Also, in the it's only instructional spaces. So our food, there's some carve outs for kitchens and other areas as well.
Now, that's not to say that we wouldn't make steps or
Right.
make changes, right? I understand that's not a good situation for educators.
Yeah.
And then lastly, on the safety plan, and I'm sure my board colleagues have some questions as well. We've had a couple of incidents over the past week and a half of, for lack of better, possibly swatting, but threats that have come through regional districts being allocated. I know some of that is outlined in the safety plan. Is it possible for you to walk us through what happens when the district receives a threat like that?
So I worked very closely on the threat that happened this week. And immediately when we received it, I called our contacts at IPD leadership. And I asked Captain Schwartz to send an officer, but to also start working on evaluating whether it's a credible versus non-credible threat. The officer was here within a few minutes. I gave him the report, and a few minutes after he left, IPD leadership command was able to tell us pretty quickly was a not credible threat. Because of that, credible versus not credible is really big for us in terms of communication. Obviously, if it's a credible threat, communication will happen immediately, and law enforcement will be on site immediately. For the non-credible threat, typically I've been asking IPD for recommendations. So, IPD would recommend, checking in with building leaders, following general safety procedures, checking in with safety team if needed. But for a non-credible threat, we don't typically, because I know this has come up quite a bit, send out communication, because sometimes we've had multiple threats since the beginning of the year. We don't want to send out communication all the time as well. But we do take it on a case-by-case basis. This last one was unusual because it was not just us, but it was in our entire region, and it looked like it might have been throughout the state as well. So based on our case-by-case evaluation of this, we did decide to send out communication.
So I'd like to ask about the communication part in a minute. Let me stop for being on my folks. Colleagues ask a question, but I'm certain that we work with just more than IPD.
Yes, I also called, I did call the sheriff as well, because our schools, IPD has been our source for defining whether an event is credible or not credible. Our largest school is with, the high school is within its own. The sheriff covers DeWitt, Boynton, and Field Caroline, covers 4 schools. The remaining of our school, the rest of our schools are covered under IPD. So, except for Q Heights, of course. So because IPD has the bulk of our schools and the largest of our student population, we look to them to make a determination on credible versus non-credible. And we've been meeting with them fairly regularly. Even before this, we're starting to have regular scheduled meetings with Chief Kelly and Captain Schwartz. Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, while we are figuring out whether it's credible or not credible, are there anything that we're doing? Like, are we contacting like principals in our schools or?
We're following the direction of law enforcement.
Okay.
So we were able, IPD was able to quickly determine that. And then we followed the direction on so for this most recent one, we were not recommended to go into lockout. We were because our schools are secure. We have a central point of access because of all of our the work we did on our front entryways. We have swipe cards and many access points. We are essentially locked in our buildings, and that was not the recommendation I received. I follow the recommendation on law enforcement because each threat or each event we get is very specific and different. If that makes sense. Yeah.
One of the messages we got to that point was that whether we go in lockdown or not, there may have been young people outside during recess. Is there something that's in the plan or something we should consider that if we do get a threat, even if it is non-credible, that we, for lack of a better word, we pull young folks back into the building?
That came up at our board meeting on Tuesday night, and I talked to some people afterward, and then I did communicate to that building. I think that's a great point. We did cancel. I will say one of our buildings was planning to do a very large evacuation drill on the day of the threat. And I worked with the building principal on probably just yesterday. As long I worked with the building principal and law enforcement to stop that drill. I think we're realizing that we need to make sure we communicate to all of our buildings, to not do additional drills, and take some extra precautions. So we can certainly work on that.
Emily, thank you. So our goal here would be to see if the board or the policy committee agrees send this to the board for a first reading. Go through the process, have a similar sort of presentation that board members ask the questions, but also to post it. One, it's already posted, so the community can see it, but the additions will be posted for an upcoming meeting. Is that the yes?
Yeah, full disclosure, Carrie did want to add some information on some health information.
Okay.
Is it, can we still move it forward while adding some additional information? I just found this out
Yeah.
recently.
I think the real question is, when do we have the language ready to announce for, is it 45 days or 30 days for a public hearing? So I think the sooner we get that, the quicker we can make the announcement for the public hearing to go from there. So
Perfect.
if that works for policy committee members, we'll make that happen. We typically hold the public hearing before a voting meeting on Monday. So
Great.
keep us posted and then highlight those changes for us as well.
Certainly. Thanks.
Nothing else on school safety. Let's hear the fun about use of school facilities.
I know I'm bringing a lot of fun today. Hold on. I will say on a positive note for building use, I'm really happy to say that our track and our stadium are open all day Saturday and all day Sunday. We are locking them to secure them at the evening, just take some precautions, but we're really happy to see people using it in the public, and that has been a positive. Of course, the tennis courts remain wide open to the public as well. So we're looking to open our doors as much as possible. So the building use.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, yeah,
Barbara?
yeah.
What is the impact that you found on staff and union agreements and things like that, of having people come and walk up?
Oh, because it's been fine because Bob and I worked a while back with EA on an overtime MOA. So we have a really great procedure for offering overtime. And we had it really spelled out. Yeah, no, it's pretty minimal. It's somebody coming to unlock and someone coming to secure the facility. Yeah.
And if I'm not, that's a great question. If I'm not mistaken, part of it was also that it's a difference between it being open and being able to use versus an event. Right, and that was part of the issue we had last year, was that someone was trying to plan an event during Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken.
We can start. I'm happy to work with that group again. The issue, I believe, was just that they wanted to be inside the facility, to do sign in for the running. I'm happy to open our doors for that piece. I think they were just worried if it's rainy or it's cold. It's always rainy, cold at the time. I mean, let's be honest. Right? Yeah. So, all right. So it's been a while. I forgot to bring this back to you all, but I wanted to bring it back. And would you like me to just recap both of these policies quickly? Does that make sense? 1500 and 1500R?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think Emily and I have seen these ad nauseum, but
I don't know if
this
you
is new
want
for
me to-
Madeline, so yes,
Yeah,
I think it's an important policy.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry for the how many times, so you brought.
No.
Yeah. All right, so of course, we recognize that buildings and grounds are valuable and an important community resource. We want to make sure that it's available to the community, supports educational activities, supports the public good. We do have a pay schedule for outside groups. And one part of the policy here is that the district can waive these costs if the outside organization is using spaces during times when school is in session. For example, if a group wants to use it in the, if the group wants to reserve a space in Culp for fine arts and we already have custodians working, it wouldn't be an additional cost to us. We are happy to waive those costs. Of course, it has to do with staff availability, space availability, vacation and holiday schedule. We have a 10-day period, but we're happy to we include language that the 10-day period can be reduced, which we actually do quite often. We don't make people, we don't say to outside groups that if you're within the 10 days, you can't try to reserve the space. We don't do that. Also, superintendent and designee has a right to waive fees. Of course, this is for the PTA and other groups that are in partnership or sponsored by the district. And then there is a clause about for-profits. So the one thing with for-profits is that any of the fees that they've gathered or any of the money they have gathered from that event, 100% of it has to be donated to an educational charity. And that's because for-profits cannot profit off of taxpayer resources. That's about as fast as I can go for the first part. The second part, 15R, is just a companion policy. There were questions about the $1 million insurance policy. Emily, I'm happy to take your suggestions from, I know it was a long time ago at this point, but I'm happy to take your suggestions and change the language from $1 million policy to the language that you included, that I don't have exactly in front of me right now. All groups have to have a valid certificate of insurance. We are happy to work. With people. We're having a hard time with the master library system. We're happy to sit down with them and walk through the process with them. We're also happy to print out the forms and have them fill it out right there and then.
So real quick before you continue, Madeline, part of this policy came up 1500 is folks were wondering why they couldn't have access to the tennis courts or in the track specifically, while other spaces were available. A playground at an elementary school was available, right, or a basketball court at LACS, and wondering why those two spaces. And so it pushed the board to have a fuller review of just the policy in general about how people are using our spaces, under what conditions. Dan took the lead on writing and making some changes. And so on the Google Doc, you see that anything that's highlighted are the changes that were recommended. And then Emily put a number of questions, so
yeah,
and good suggestions. Emily, I don't know if all yours have been answered or there's things that you want to discuss about this policy as well.
No, I think I guess I'm still.
Certainly make changes.
No, I mean, I think that for the most part, it's great. I think that we had all of these conversations about like the playgrounds and like how that's a little bit of a like gray area.
Right.
And so now I'm thinking about, well, now that the track is unlocked, it means that people don't need to go through any of these processes.
That's right.
And we are saying explicitly right now that they can therefore, when it's unlocked, they can freely use it.
Yes, 100%.
So are we saying, and if we're saying that, then we're obviously saying that about like the playground,
Sure.
which we treated it that way.
Yeah.
So as long as we.
Yeah.
I guess this comes back to the same thing of like, is there any reason that we would want a section on, we talked about like adding a section on like open space or school grounds or something like that. We, I don't know, we decided
Versus indoor
that we
space.
were going to, but if we're talking about like unlocked and freely available, do we want to be explicit about what we're actually saying? Is there ever a time that like open spaces, we would still want folks to go through this process, because I know we talk about like sports.
Yeah, the
teams.
only thing is, so for Northeast example, for Northeast. I know they're doing modified soccer on the field there. So that coach in the athletics department puts that in,
Right,
right?
so how do we specify the difference?
I think we said that, isn't there a carve out that says we have the right? The district in 1500. Conditions of use for district facilities, the district reserves the right to determine if a requested use would interfere with or disturb the district's educational program. That probably doesn't quite fit that, because they're not, to your example, they wouldn't be putting in a request through master library.
But why would a modified sports team have to put in a request if it's
They-
sponsored by ICSD? I mean, I know for scheduling purposes.
They do, well, I think maybe a better example might be, because we're opening the state. I know, and I talked to coaches who said, I want to do, I want to invite my JV or my varsity players to do a shooting or something. I recommend he or she put it in so that if there's a group already out on the field, we don't have a difficult interaction. It's more of, oh, I'm sorry, I reserved this, I'm the coach of JV, whatever. So maybe that supports Emily's point of adding one more section about open spaces. Because I guess it doesn't specifically spell it out in this policy.
What, Emily, what are we hoping to clarify with the phrase about open spaces?
That someone. That it's clear that someone now who would, who we used to ask to fill out a form to be able to run privately on the track. I guess it's like giving them the permission ahead of time, saying that like, this is not what this isn't related to, so. And maybe that's just fine, but as soon as we're kind of like, well, of course you can use it because it's open. Then we're basically that's saying, of course you can use anything as long as it's open and available. And that's fine if that is what we're saying, I think that that's covered, but if there's ever a time that we're saying. Yes, it's open and available, but you can't use it because you need to fill out this form because you're a sports team or whatever.
It sounds like it might just be a few sentences that just adds that sports team. It's not just sports, it'd be, fine arts, if ICSD theater group wants to use a space, but Running in Places Theater is also trying to book it for the same time. I can see how adding a few sentences could clear up that confusion.
Right, I know we made some attempt to make sure we're talking about the difference between individuals versus organizations, or if I'm running a youth bureau soccer team, that's a vastly different thing if I'm just kicking around a soccer ball with, my young one, right? So, okay, we can do that. The question becomes, will we see this in 2026, 2027?
I think that if we can.
I can bring it back to the next.
I mean, could we not, could we just talk separately think
Sure.
of a line or two and then just take it straight to the full.
Fine
board,
with me,
since it'll be
it's certainly
minimal.
much more efficient.
Yeah, I don't think we need to come back to.
Okay,
Or should see that.
I'll just write it. Okay. all right.
With. What's today? Today is the 7th. We don't think it'd be ready for the 14th, or you do think it'd be ready for the 14th?
I think it's just a few sentences. Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, this has already been up for a first reading. Am I right or wrong about
Let
that?
me double check that.
I believe
I'm
that's-
pretty certain.
I'm
pretty
almost
certain.
positive, we've seen this, wait,
Right, so a couple of times.
yeah,
So, but let's clarify, but the reason why I'm asking the question is I'd like to put it on the agenda. For whatever it is, if it's a first reading, great, but if it's a second reading, then let's put it for a second reading and adoption for the 14th.
okay,
I hope the next couple of days we'll send a
yeah,
reminder.
I'll send it to you in 48 hours. Yeah,
We're-
and I,
Yes,
I will.
understood. Yeah. Additional questions about either one, and I did put on there, it is normally we put it as a procedure, I think we put it down as a regulation. It's policy hyperlingo, I'm not too worried about it, but it's 1500 and 1500-R.
Yes.
All right. Fantastic. We'll keep it moving if that works on the agenda item 4.4, which is student ex officio members, the Board of Education. This is a policy, Dan, I think you're staying with us on this one for a minute, right?
Oh, I didn't know.
And
Okay, yeah.
and then we will,
Yeah.
we can, Emily can send an update as well, and Madeline as well, right? This is a policy that came from Governor Hochul as well. Last year, New York State passed a mandate that all school boards are required to have at least one student ex officio member on the boards of education with various responsibilities outlined by the Board of Education. There's a couple of legal questions we're still waiting on. ICSD has had a board rep, and Tricia, thank you for the research. We could find at least from 2002, I think is what I was asking. So it's been a longstanding practice of the ICSD Board of Education to have a student rep. The real question about this policy, as I read it, happens in two different ways. One, there are special considerations for small city school districts, which Ithaca is considered, and how a ex officio member of the board or a student rep of the board would be selected. It seems like possibly what we do would not be permitted under the current mandate, as I have read it, others may read it differently. And then making sure, since we have two high schools, that we're writing language that talks about both Ithaca High School and the Lehman Alternative Community School. And then just again, general student responsibilities as outlined. We received a template from the New York State School Board Association. We used that template, removed some of the language in the notes just because they don't necessarily apply. And what I believe is posted on to board docs is a draft without question. We've sent it to Ithaca High School reps and LICS reps. I would imagine they probably have not had time to view it, and yet there's still plenty of time because this is our first reading. I'll then go to the board for a first reading, then I'll come back to policy, then I'll go back to the board again. So there's time for some dialogue. Emily, I know it was short order, so I don't know that question that came up around whether or not small city school districts can elect by a vote of the general body. There's been, yeah,
No,
it was.
although I'm thinking creatively about even if the student body did that and then made a recommendation to the principal, couldn't the principal then make a recommendation to the board and that would still meet the requirements?
Or make a recommendation to student government, right? Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of workarounds. I would like to run that through BSK
Okay.
and see what they say, but for the most part, I think the only thing that we were primarily stuck on was, can Ithaca High School specifically vote as they have been for student reps? I don't know if you all read the message about LACS as well. I do think that's a very interesting argument, given a democratic process and given that the entire school is in essence the student government council. Is their policy or process a little bit different than the high schools? And we can ask the SNK around both of those questions. And then as I've written to folks, because we've had board reps since 2002, and this mandate states that you've been doing this for longer than 2003, there is a possibility to continue on with your current practice. The unfortunate thing is we never had a policy about our student reps, and so there's no policy that dates back to 2003. But we have clear minutes from meetings that indicate that we've had board reps from, I think, as long as I remember, actually.
Yeah.
Like
We went back
95.
to, I think, 2003.
Yep.
Was last.
So how would board colleagues, how would you like to proceed around this policy? What are our thoughts? I mean, I know we want to get feedback from our current student reps and their advisors as well. I'm in agreement.
I think I would rather like wait and hear from everybody first to just make a more informal decision about it.
Any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think we have a couple of like specific items I think we need to get their insights on, so maybe we can just think about what they are.
Should we try to outline those now? So, I mean, if I'm hearing about the other process, similarly, right, that, if we write down these questions and wait till November, we'll be talking about the first month of November, which means it wouldn't go to the board until the middle of November. It wouldn't be adopted until mid-December. Is this a policy that maybe we won't have ready for the 14th? But we could have ready for late October if we do some of the work prior to the next. Like we could put it on the October 28th meeting, for example, if we do some of these questions as a first reading. Knowing that we're gonna bring it back then in November as opposed to waiting for November to put it back up for a first reading. Does that timeline work for folks? It's the Google Doc is already created. We'll ask folks for feedback and see if they have any suggestion notes. We'll reach out to BSNK about these 3 questions. I'll try to summarize them and include everybody on it, and then we'll see if we can't put this on for is it the 28th?
The 28th.
Are there thoughts, do you all have thoughts about specific concerns that are of particular interest to get from them, so that we can guide those conversations a little bit?
For me, the legal questions are Ithaca High School's current practice, LACS's current practice, and are we grandparented in by the 2003 stipulation of the mandate? Those would be the 3 that I'm interested in. I think there are other more specific questions that I think I would love to discuss with our student reps. Should there be an equal number of student reps from each school? Right now, I think we have 7 total. Is that the right number? Especially since the state only requires 1 ex officio member. Is there? I mean, I think those are larger questions as 1 board member.
Maybe that.
Okay, yeah, I agree, those, I have a lot of questions about the numbers, and then also just about the selection process. So the law was really explicit about making sure, or wanting to help make sure that the students were representing the student body.
Yeah.
And so even if we find out that legally the current processes work, I would like to hear from the schools and the students about how those processes are ensuring that student representatives are really reflective of the student body, both in, if we want to add anything about like requirements around advertising it, or being more explicit about what the role is, or how it could work, or thinking about transportation. Like there's just a lot of pieces that probably inhibit some students from being able to participate, including I'm not familiar with the process at all, but student government is one of those things. It's also not very inclusive all the time. And I can't speak to it from IHS specifically, but just I want to make sure that we use this as an opportunity to strengthen those pieces of the policy.
And even if it doesn't work its way into the policy, it's a conversation that worth having. That's what I'm hearing. Because we are being recorded, let me just say and not everyone's going to read the policy. The mandate gives 6 different options for an ex officio member to be selected. 1, the student body president of a high school. 2, duly elected by the student body, which is something that small city school districts are not allowed to do. And that is my understanding of our current practice, that they are duly elected by the student body. 3, selected by the high school student government. 4, selected by the high school principal. 5, selected by the superintendent of schools. Or 6, selected by a majority vote of the Board of Education. Those are the options that are currently available, and we're trying to find ways that are the most sort of equitable, representative, and keeping within the mandate as we understand it. So. Well, we send it back out. Emily, should I rightfully or wrongfully assume with all your writing that you're taking some notes on this? Also, you want to reach back out to Madeline and I about,
Sure.
we discuss if that's, if I can ask of that.
I guess the other piece, is just about like the role that they play. Because if we change the number total dramatically, that'll impact it, but if we also want to keep a relatively large number, thinking about like if there's a ex officio student who is identified that has more engagement opportunities versus like a second group that is engaging a little less. Our student reps at the last board meeting pointed out that we already, our current policy already indicates that they could be engaging in conversations a lot more than they are. So I know that there's an interesting eagerness there and an acknowledgement that we have set an environment that would be really difficult. So thinking about how we can balance getting as many student voices as we can and also not staying in board meetings until.
Yeah, and just so folks know, one of the pieces of language that I changed, it said something like, the ex officio member can leave with permission of the board president. And I was like, I don't think that's a necessary thing to have at any point in time, right? If a student needs to leave early, then they can leave early. But it does outline things that also they cannot participate, right? They are not a voting member of the board. They are not allowed to enter into executive session. They do not speak on behalf of the board. And so there are both things that are great value and things that the mandate says that ex officio members can't. Emily, to your point, I'm really interested in that question as well. I know hearing from some other school districts, they've had a group of student reps and one ex officio member. And I don't know if that's something that would work here or not, but I think that's the conversation for us to have with everybody. All right, so that'll be I'm certain a lively discussion on the 28th. We got that. Any additional things on that policy? I'm trying to be mindful of time as well. All right, then we'll go on to agenda item 4.6, which is student voter registration and pre-registration. Another mandate from the state is that New York State school districts are required to help facilitate voter registration and voter pre-registration for 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. We've been doing a good number of this work. Anyway, I think the difference is the pre-registration part of it. But I know, Emily, you've been in conversation with some folks, and Madeline, you've been in conversation with some folks. And so maybe we should get just a rough idea of what we're currently doing. And then we can continue the outreach efforts from there. And again, I agree. Anything you want to add?
I think the conversation has been starting on, I know for seniors, they take government, but like to incorporate those in like, the junior classes. To start that conversation at an earlier, age, and maybe some curriculum, change a couple of things or add some stuff. Just the overall importance of it and why their participation is critical to the outcome.
Yeah, I think that there's an opportunity to, both of the schools seem to be doing a really great job of engaging students in one way or another. To make sure that they understand the registration and have an opportunity to get registered to vote before 18 and enroll those younger students. And I think that you can jump in as well here, but I know that there were ideas about even just getting support from the district around promotional materials so that those can be more widely shared across schools, that I think could be a huge help. And I do think that the policy schools will need to think about how to expand it across all of the ages, because they don't want it to be related to course credit. And so the governance courses probably have a really good model that can be adopted in a way that's non-course related. But I think again, working with the schools to just basically take what they're doing and expand it a little bit to make sure that it's reaching all students. I know that there's opportunities, or there's, I think that the policy explicitly, for the guidance explicitly talked about partnerships between, like the nonprofit work here about getting voter registration done. So I know a little bit less about that. It sounds like LICS does some of that, but also just thinking about how explicit or not we want to be, or just kind of acknowledging that there are organizations in the community that can partner and encouraging the district to do that in the
Sure.
policy. So.
I had a great conversation with Keith at LACS, Keith Harrington. He has a great idea to start this work in their family groups at LACS. I know it's more of like a deep and meaningful home base. I'm Sean, I know you're well aware of it, but he's wondering how he can work with the district to get presentations and posters and registration forms and start to deliver the message through family groups, but also use the ASM model too as well to connect on a larger scope with the school. Emily did a nice job connecting to some of the teachers there. It sounds like they are working already with Rejoice the Vote, League of Women Voters. They're doing free Ben and Jerry's. That's very ethical. Getting free Ben and Jerry's to as a kickoff. But it sounds like the district can work to support Keith in terms of maybe ICSD communications with forms, posters, presentations. And then he was wondering also if what he's doing at LACS could be similar to what's happening at IHS as well. They could work together as partners. So it was it's brief, but he had some fantastic benefits.
I don't miss an opportunity to say thank you to for me, a community icon of Jeff Furman, who's partly behind Rejoice the Vote and definitely behind us getting Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
That's so funny. Yes, he is. He's the reason behind it.
So then what would be the next steps, right? I know this is our first time sort of looking at even a draft of the policy, doing some data collection about what it looks like. The policy does ask for us, the mandate asks for us to be a little bit more explicit in how we're going to make this happen. And so it does need to be in writing. So the ideas are phenomenal, but we're going to have some sort of action plan to put into the policy.
Okay.
And this one, I'm okay with waiting. Well, I'm not okay with waiting because we have elections coming up in November. But while we can probably do both simultaneously, right? Sort of use it as a way to both do registration and pre-registration prior to the November elections as well. So I would ask that we continue doing the research and the work and try to come up with some specifics and put it back on the November policy committee would be my recommendation.
How did we, I really appreciate the research on the other districts. There were some of the things that I shared, there are some common threads. And, but I'm wondering also if either of you had any strong feelings on some of what some of the other districts are doing as well.
My quick answer is no, but I will say what I always say to my college students, that my faith in this policy is strong, because if voting didn't matter, we make it easier. So whatever we do, I want people to have as much access in the democratic process as possible. And I think if it's financial support, and we know that wouldn't be significant, right? If it's a couple $100 to be able to put promotional materials out there, then let's have that conversation. If it's, I think if I'm not mistaken, the policy explicitly states that it cannot be connected to a course as part of a grade.
Yes, that's
right. And so we may have to rethink some of what, and I don't know if it currently is or isn't. I know it does come up in Thank you, for my class.
Or like maybe other subjects, history or something else you can mention. It's part of,
I also think we want to be a little careful because we have, in writing policy, it means that we do have an opportunity to not be too explicit. So
Oh.
to make sure that, you know, I think that one of the takeaways that I had from some of the other district policies is that they're not like super explicit about exactly what, and it seems like I was very heartened to see and hear about the things that are already going on, and so I think that there's an opportunity to write it in a way that the board is directing the district and the superintendent to be able to do a lot of the thoughtful work, working in partnership with the principals, and also just kind of keeping language in there to make sure that we're being explicit about the things that are in the guidance, but I think there's a
That
way
makes
to
sense.
balance the two.
Yeah. Yeah, should I have a draft? Would you guys like me to share some draft suggestions? Yeah.
Well, we have a draft currently, right? So it's incomplete at best.
I meant just for the 16 to 17.
I think some language would be very helpful.
Okay, no
And
problem.
outside of
Yeah, I can do
the
that.
governance courts.
Yes,
Okay, happy to do that.
and I appreciate Emily's reminder, of maintaining flexibility. Right, it shouldn't be too prescribed because then it gets locked in.
for me, I just wanna make sure that we just don't create certain events for families and not all families can attend. So just being able to facilitate that within school for all students, so they are all aware and well informed.
Yeah.
To me, that's like,
All right,
Anything else on this policy?
sure. Yeah. Yeah, we can both work on it, and then, yeah.
You want to just call.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah. Thank you.
And feel free to just throw it into the Google Doc that we're working on.
Okay.
Everyone is editing. Our last policy to discuss this evening comes from a number of ongoing conversations over my entire tenure on the board. Sometimes some very interesting conversations, but that is the naming of spaces, rooms, and or facilities. The board does not have a policy on this. It sort of has happened. I don't want to say randomly, but whether we're talking about a sign for the baseball field or we're talking about a gym at elementary school. It just sort of has happened as things have come up. And in the past, I want to say year, we've probably gotten 5 or 6 requests. And it just made sense to us to think about that we should probably have a much more formalized process that is equitable so we understand what's taking place. So we pulled together, thank you, Tricia, for polling folks across the state, seeing what other school districts do. Thank you, Emily, for creating a chart which tried to outline some of the key highlights of what are included in some of those policies. Those policies, I will say the New York State School Board Association policy, I believe, was like 3 sentences long. The board reserves the right to support naming of spaces. That's what we're trying to avoid. Other school districts, there's a creation of a committee, or there is a presentation that's required at a board, or there's a petition with a certain number of signatures that are needed. There's in any number of ways that folks have been going around sort of naming spaces. But we knew that this was it's probably a policy that the community is very interested in without realizing that they're interested in it yet. You know, it's one of those things that when you need it, then you're looking for it. So open floor, this is our first conversation about it. We've been batting around via email, but our first time to talk as a board. So any thoughts, any things that we should consider, any lessons that you've learned from looking from across the state? Two were outside the state, but most of them were all inside of New York. So open conversation.
I think I worry. I don't know if I have an unfounded worry or if I just watching what's been going on in the country the last several years, like reading it, I just felt like, man, that's a lot of responsibility to put on the superintendent.
Mm.
Cause it seems like a pretty smooth. What I'm looking at is basically a process that allows like people to petition or submit requests and to kind of like make their argument for why it would be a good name to be used. I think also we would add something about like the superintendent could also kind of start that proposal and process, especially if it were like a new facility. We wouldn't necessarily have to wait for a community member to petition to have something kind of changed or named. So we would want to add that. But when I was going through all of them, like you said, Sean, there were huge variations and some of them just seemed like they would take forever. And so there's that balance of making sure that we have community member input and that we're, especially community members that are a part of that school or community or whatever it is. And also allowing for a little bit of like moving things forward by giving more opportunity for the superintendent to kind of keep it moving. So that is all to say that I'm not really saying anything in particular, but just being sensitive to the fact that naming things has become so fraught, and how do we, I guess I don't know yet, and I would love other input on like how to balance not having one person, like the superintendent or even the superintendent and board setting blame for doing something else.
The process.
Yeah, but also not, putting together a committee that approves another committee, that approves another committee, which is what some of the other policies indicated, so I don't know.
I think I have two thoughts so far as I was been researching this and looking at it and have participated in different ways. One, I think the decision-making of naming spaces should be at the board level. I think that's part of a democratic vote. I would feel much better with the board making a decision in some sort of process. Two, whatever process we have, I think I would like for there to be some sort of public hearing. So it may not be a committee. I mean, some of those committees were, you need 3 people from every stakeholder group, and I don't know, just trying to wrangle everyone together would take a significant amount of time. And then the one that I think I did see was that there had to be some sort of like research or proposal to justify, and not to make it overly complicated, but I do think there's value in someone making the argument about why this space should be named, right? So as one example, I believe we were asked to name a space at Beverly J. Martin last school year, which made complete sense and without question deserving. And without a process, it seemed like we would be opening ourselves up to naming every space possible. And I know this one comes from one that's also close and dear to my heart, of naming a space at Boynton, which I also, without question, support and still want to have a process for it. So that was sort of my quick thinking as it was, like it definitely should get the board level, because then it requires 5 votes or at least, right, some community conversation or interaction and some sort of, I don't mean like a 4-page, thesis, actually it would be, we call that a short essay, right? But something like that, and then there may be some other steps to it as well that would be worthwhile.
I think one of the things, I agree with all of those, and that does bring up an interesting question that I didn't see in the other policies about like which spaces do we name, like do we want to be explicit about so that it doesn't come up of, even if people went through that process, are we sending them in every classroom or something in a school, so whether we want to be explicit about that. And then the other, I don't see it in here, but I know in 1 or 2 of the policies, like it explicitly directed the superintendent to maintain like a list of names that had been submitted, and I think that that's important too, because when more than one name comes through, like for the Boynton gym, I'd be so sad if that name like was kind of passed over for this one instance and then didn't come up again. So that would be a good piece too.
So that made me think, to that point, one, there are plaque options that are in You're right, well, one of the policies, right, that you can also have plaques and not say naming spaces. But one of the big conversations that we had a couple of years ago was also a conversation around financial donation. And if someone is able to provide a large financial donation and then have a space or a field named after them. And I didn't see that in any of the policies, but we've experienced it. So for me, I'd like to have that conversation, like, how do we separate the two of those? That it's not buying a space, right, to be named. It's naming in honor of, right, either the commitment to service, I don't know how else to say it, but that was a conversation we've had before as well. So I think this one is gonna take us a little bit and I'm okay with, I think this is an important enough policy that will probably be around for a while to sort of think about some other options and to do it right. And there's probably between now and November, maybe there's a time we had discussed possibly all trying to get together, and maybe this is one of those policies that we find a way to get together either through Zoom or here at the board building to talk about, try to workshop this one a little bit and doing some additional research. That's what I would like to do, and then bring forward a proposal to the board. Understanding that there are other infinite number of options, but from our research, this is what we know we may think would be worthwhile. Is that okay? Is that okay with you, Emily?
Yeah.
So let's put this back on for the November meeting with an expectation that policy members will try to get together and get a draft soon. I don't think we can promise 48 hours like Dan. We do have Dan on record saying 48 hours, by the way, so.
Yeah.
That's all.
I'll make it.
Okay.
I'll make it.
You know,
Other discussion items would be something that we need to return back to and we can put on the November policy committee. And that would be to return to the list. I think there are 12 policies left over that were still passed in the 1960s or 1970s that were recommended for deletion. We deleted 5 of them already. Emily and I went through those. I think we identified the next possible batch, but we can still do that as well. And maybe at that same meeting that we talk about naming spaces, we can identify another 5 policies that need to be deleted. With an understanding, some of them we had some concerns about because they may have an impact on other policies that were existing, so it may take a little bit of research. That works as well, and I can make sure I can resend that link to everybody about those policies.
we also had a discussion several meetings ago about the tuition cap for ICSD teachers. We talked about doing.
A
that,
tuition cap or
well, a cap on the number of students who receive tuition.
my assumption is that it is a negotiated item, that it's currently in the contract.
The reason that we talked about it at a board meeting at a policy committee meeting a couple of policy committee meetings ago is because and I could be wrong here, so we need to follow up about this. My understanding was that they talked with one of the earlier negotiations about taking that out of the contract, and Dr. Brown indicating that he'd be more interested in having it become a policy. And I believe that at the next meeting, that was when we had a couple of folks come and talk about that. And so I think that we talked about looking at it from a policy perspective as well, instead.
So 2 quick things. One, I'm not sure if this is, I support that completely, right? Well, I support examining, making sure that there is more space available for students. That part I feel I can say, maybe I shouldn't say, I do. I believe that question also came up because there is a policy that states if you do not live in the school district, that you are not allowed to pay tuition to attend the school district. That's a policy that I, as one board member, maybe this is something we bring up to all board members, that's a policy that I am still in favor of. For a variety of reasons, even though I understand when it was written, time to change, the economy has changed, the housing market has definitely changed. But for me, I see these as slightly different conversations. One is sort of a benefit for teachers and a retention mode for teachers. And one as, can I live in Cortland and pay tuition to attend ICSD schools, which is allowable under the law, is my understanding. School districts do that. That it is a board decision, but we decided whenever that policy was passed, I don't know, we were both here, right, 2012, something like that, yeah. That was not the option, so, I guess what I would say is let's talk with our negotiating team and see, what their take is. Let's, talk with our legal counsel and see what options are even available to us. And if it is the want of the board to revisit that policy, just as a general practice, then by all means, let's revisit it. And if it's about current negotiations, then let's have that conversation as well. So, how do we want to capture? One, let's make sure it's captured in the minutes. And then I will, follow up on possible next steps about where that is. And well, let me ask the board, is the board members of the policy committee, is it the desire of the policy committee to revisit the general policy and practice currently of folks who do not reside within ICSD catchment area to pay tuition to attend?
No,
So we're really talking about the first one.
yeah,
Right.
I guess what we really need, we need to get clarification from Dr. Brown on it. If he was
Sure.
interested in, if both negotiating teams were interested in having it not be. I think that when we were at the policy committee, I was surprised to hear things like even if one, like one child in a family was able to come from outside of the district, that perhaps the second child couldn't if we reached the cap that I guess is within the contract at this point.
Well, there was a process for that, it got started to get expensive.
Right, so just, yeah, maybe this isn't even the place to, I think that there's an opportunity, and it sounds like some other districts maybe have in policy something about just staff. So, yeah, just something to explore.
So let's have it reflect in the minutes that will follow and may not come back to another policy committee if it's determined that it falls somewhere else. I just want to make sure that's clear, but let's continue the dialogue and conversation. That makes complete sense to me. Any additional items?
To revisit, I just want to clarify the safety plan. Was what first new? Is that what you were saying?
No,
Was it the safety plan? You were saying? Or?
1515
Yes, that
R.
one. Okay.
Dan was gonna get back to us within 48 hours with some updates and
Yes.
sensor to. The safety plan, if I'm not mistaken, Dan was gonna work with Carrie.
I have to get some information from Carrie, but then I think we're ready to,
I would dare say the committee would probably be more than happy that once we're ready to post for 45 days, let's move that along.
okay.
Because it still would be, before or after our next policy committee.
That
meeting.
makes sense.
So let's, as soon as we can get it out there, let's try to find a date for board meeting
Okay,
to schedule the public hearing.
simultaneously.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And policy 1500 and 1500 are were first.
Yes. Yep. And I'm, depending on what, I haven't seen next week's agenda, depending on what's next week's agenda. Would be more than happy to have you come talk about the safety plan as well, if we're gonna be moving forward with the public hearing.
Okay,
It's not like it would be up for first reading, it'd just be letting people know about the updates that
Sure.
are in this latest draft.
okay,
And that a public hearing will be coming, and once that public hearing, then we'll
Alright.
go for vote and adopt.
sure. And 1500.
And 15.
Okay, great. Yeah, perfect.
And then. Right, we said we would gonna gather additional feedback about ex officio members. If I'm not mistaken, I heard Emily offering also to do some support around voter registration. And then we'll try to connect around naming spaces and see what that looks like.
And the process for getting feedback on ex officios, just following up and asking them to giving them a deadline.
I asked, I think I believe you both were on the email, but I asked Mary and Dan to take the lead on that, so. Whatever that looks like or how that happens would be great.
I was texting Carrie to send me, that quick.
We're not supposed to text them.
I know.
You were trying to see if the Yankee game started.
No, but that's, never mind.
Right,
Sorry, the link is-
they're gonna, you're gonna work with Dan, right, on that?
Yeah, if we could just get like a deadline so that folks know, like, if you want to provide feedback on the ex officio student one, like, this is the date, so that, because we're hoping to talk about it on the 14th, what did we say?
No, I believe it's the
No.
28th.
The 20th.
Okay.
So we want enough time of like getting that feedback from them, being able to review all of it, drafting something.
Okay.
Sorry. Yep. Does that work for everybody? Yes. All right, fantastic. Is any other business? All right, we will see everybody soon. Have a good evening.
All right.